Catherine Evans, 58 years old here. Just 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in my daughter Lisa's guest bedroom staring at a lottery ticket worth $12 million while listening to her scream that I was a burden she couldn't wait to be rid of. When she found out about the winning ticket, she kicked me out shouting, I wouldn't get a penny of her money. But there was one crucial detail she overlooked in her greed. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal and justice. I never imagined I'd find myself homeless at 58. For 30 years, I taught third grade at Lincoln Elementary, pouring my heart into other people's children while raising my own daughter as best I could. My classroom was my second home, filled with construction paper art and the sweet sound of children learning to read. I retired just 3 years ago, expecting to enjoy my golden years in the modest three-bedroom home where I'd lived for 25 years. Then my husband Robert got sick. The cancer moved quickly, and within 8 months he was gone. We'd been married for 36 years. He was my rock, my best friend, the one who made me laugh even on my worst days. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough saved for a comfortable retirement. Or so we thought, until the medical bills started arriving. Even with insurance, the costs were astronomical. Experimental treatments, specialist hospital stays, it all added up faster than I could keep track. By the time Robert passed, our savings were depleted and I was drowning in medical debt. I tried to keep up with the mortgage payments, but eventually the bank sent foreclosure notices. My hands, already stiff from arthritis that had worsened with stress, would tremble as I opened each new letter. My small teacher's pension wasn't enough to cover everything. Through all this, my relationship with my daughter Lisa remained distant but cordial. She'd call every couple of weeks but rarely visited. Lisa had always been ambitious from a young age. While other children played with toys, she set up pretend offices and practiced signing important documents. I was proud of her drive, even as I worried about her growing materialism. Now at 35, Lisa was a marketing executive at Harman & Reed, a prestigious firm downtown. She'd married James Whitfield, a real estate developer from a wealthy family. They had 2 beautiful children, Zoe, 10, and Tyler, 8, and lived in a sprawling house in Meadow Heights, the most exclusive neighborhood in our city. Lisa had always been somewhat embarrassed by her middle-class upbringing. As a teenager, she'd complain about our small house and why we couldn't vacation in Europe like her friends' families. I'd tried to instill values of gratitude and kindness, but Lisa seemed to absorb the opposite lessons. The more successful she became, the more she distanced herself from her roots. When I called to tell her about the foreclosure, I wasn't expecting much. Maybe she could help me find an affordable apartment or loan me enough for a security deposit. I certainly wasn't asking to move in. But to my surprise, after a long pause and what sounded like a muffled conversation with James, she offered their guest room temporarily. Just until you get back on your feet, Mom. She'd set her voice tight. We have the space. I'd considered other options first. My best friend Judy offered her spare room, but her apartment was tiny, and with her grandchildren visiting often, it would have been too cramped. I had no siblings, and Robert's brother lived across the country and had his own health issues. So with no viable alternatives, I accepted Lisa's offer, viewing it as a chance to not only solve my housing crisis, but perhaps repair our strained relationship. I'd get to spend time with my grandchildren, whom I rarely saw. Maybe Lisa would finally see that I had value beyond what I could provide materially. The day I arrived at Lisa's home, I was struck by its vastness. Their house was at least 4 times the size of my old place, with soaring ceilings, marble floors, and furniture that looked too pristine to actually use. Lisa greeted me with a quick hug and showed me to my room. We cleared out some space in the basement guest room, she explained, leading me down a flight of stairs. It's the most private, and you'll have your own bathroom. The room was clean but small, with a single window that looked out at ground level. It felt more like a hotel room than a space in a family home. Still, I was grateful and told Lisa as much. I'll try not to be a burden, I promised. I can help with the kids and cooking, whatever you need. Lisa nodded briskly. That would be helpful. The children's schedule is on the refrigerator, and they usually need help with homework between 4 and 5. She checked her watch. James and I are having people over for dinner tonight, but don't worry about joining us. I'll have Maggie bring a plate down for you. I later learned Maggie was their housekeeper who came 3 times a week. That first night set the tone for what my life would become in Lisa's home. I wasn't a mother or grandmother there. I was somewhere between a guest and staff. Still, I tried to remain hopeful, I calculated that if I saved every penny from my pension, minus what I would contribute to household expenses, I might have enough for a small apartment within 6 months. I just needed to make the best of the situation until then. Things will get better, I whispered to myself that first night, clutching the photo of Robert I kept by my bed. They have to. I quickly discovered that living in Lisa's house was nothing like I had imagined. The guest room in the basement was technically mine, but it felt like I was being hidden away. The space was functional but impersonal. Plain beige walls, a bed dresser, and small desk. I tried to add a few personal touches. A quilt Robert's mother had made a small plant on the windowsill, but Lisa frowned when she saw them. "Let's not clutter things up, Mom," she said. "Remember, this is temporary." It became clear that my primary value was as free childcare. While Lisa had initially mentioned a regular babysitter, that arrangement mysteriously ended the week after I moved in. Suddenly, I was expected to be available whenever needed, often with last-minute notice. "Can you watch the kids tonight? James and I have a dinner with clients." Lisa would text midday, giving me no real option to decline. I loved spending time with Zoe and Tyler. They were bright, curious children who still showed genuine excitement when they saw me. But even those relationships were carefully controlled by Lisa, who scheduled their time meticulously between school sports music lessons and play dates with children of other successful parents. "Grandma, why don't you eat dinner with us?" Tyler asked one evening after I'd set the table for the family. Before I could answer, Lisa interjected, "Grandma prefers to eat earlier, honey. It's better for people her age." The truth was, I'd never been given the option to join them. My meals were usually eaten alone at the small table in my room or in the kitchen before the family came home. Meanwhile, Lisa and James frequently entertained guests in their enormous open-concept living and dining area. I could hear the laughter and conversation from my room, the clinking of expensive wine glasses, and the animated discussions about vacations, investments, and exclusive events. Not once was I invited to join these gatherings. When Lisa's friends did see me, they often mistook me for hired help. "Oh, is this your new housekeeper?" one woman asked Lisa while I was bringing in groceries. Lisa didn't correct her. What stung most was hearing Lisa complain about my presence while thinking I couldn't hear. The basement had thin air vents that carried sound surprisingly well. "It's such a burden having Mom here," I overheard her telling James one night. "Do you know how embarrassing it is when people find out everyone else's parents are either self-sufficient or in retirement communities?" "We agreed it would be temporary," James replied, his voice lower but still audible. "Have you looked into those assisted living places? Some of them take people with limited means." "I've checked, but there's waiting lists. Besides, she'd need to qualify for more assistance, and that's a whole process." They discussed my life and future as if I were a problem to solve rather than a person with dignity and feelings. I cried silently that night, wondering how the sweet little girl I'd raised could have grown so cold. Despite everything, I maintained one small weekly indulgence, buying a single lottery ticket every Friday. It was something Robert and I had done throughout our marriage, a tiny shared hope that cost just a few dollars a week. "One day, our luck will change, Kathy," he'd say with a wink, as we checked the numbers together on Saturday mornings. After he died, I continued the tradition, walking to Eddie's corner store each Friday. Eddie was in his 60s, a kind-hearted man who remembered every regular customer. His small convenience store was one of the few places I felt welcomed. "The usual, Mrs. Evans?" he'd ask as I approached the counter. "Yes, please, Eddie. Just one quick pick." "You never know, right?" he'd say with a genuine smile as he printed my ticket. Those brief interactions meant more to me than Eddie could ever know. They were moments when I felt seen as a person, not a burden. I never mentioned the lottery tickets to Lisa. She would have seen it as irresponsible spending, another example of why I was in financial trouble. The few dollars came from cutting other small things, a cheaper brand of coffee, one less bus ride by walking instead. As weeks passed, I tried various approaches to improve my standing in Lisa's home. I offered to pay a modest rent from my pension, which Lisa accepted immediately without discussion. I attempted to connect with her by sharing old family photos and stories from her childhood, hoping to remind her of happier times between us. "Remember this camping trip you caught your first fish and were so proud?" I said, showing her a photograph of a gap-toothed 7-year-old Lisa holding up a small trout. She glanced at it briefly. "I was filthy. I can't believe you let me get that dirty." I tried to bond with James through his interest in classic cars, which I knew about from Robert's similar passion. Robert restored a '67 Mustang when Lisa was little. He would have loved to see your collection. James nodded politely but quickly excused himself to take a phone call. With the grandchildren, I had more success. I taught them games from Lisa's childhood and read them the same stories I'd read to her. These moments were precious but increasingly rare as Lisa scheduled more and more activities that took them out of the house. Each attempt to connect was met with indifference or outright annoyance. I was trying to build bridges while Lisa seemed determined to erect walls. Still, I persisted, holding on to hope that something would eventually break through. As winter settled in, Lisa's treatment of me grew increasingly harsh. What had started as coldness evolved into something that felt deliberate and cruel. She began timing my interactions with the grandchildren, interrupting story time or board games with manufactured urgencies. "That's enough for today, Mom. The children need to practice piano now," she'd say, despite no piano lesson being on the schedule. One Saturday morning, I came upstairs to find Lisa going through a box of my personal belongings that I'd stored in the laundry room corner. "What are you doing?" I asked, alarmed to see her handling the few mementos I had left. "Spring cleaning," she replied without looking up. "There's too much clutter around here." "But those are my things," I protested as she dropped a hand-painted mug from Robert into a trash bag. It had a chip, but was one of the few items I had that he'd made during a pottery class we took together for our 30th anniversary. "It's broken, Mom, and honestly, we need the space. You said yourself this arrangement is temporary, so there's no point in spreading out." I rescued the mug when she wasn't looking, but later discovered she'd discarded several other items, including photo albums and Robert's old sweater that I sometimes slept with when I missed him most. Lisa also began making pointed comments about my appearance, suggesting I was letting myself go when arthritis made it difficult for me to do my hair the way I once had. "You might try harder with your appearance, Mom," she said one morning. "The neighbors will think we're not taking care of you." The isolation grew worse when Lisa instituted a new family dinner rule that somehow excluded me. "It's important for the four of us to have family time," she explained, meaning herself, James, and the children. I was instructed to eat earlier in the kitchen like staff. The message was clear: I wasn't considered family anymore. The lowest point came during an important business dinner Lisa hosted for potential clients. She had initially told me to stay in my room for the evening, which was hurtful but not surprising. However, an hour before guests arrived, she knocked on my door. "Mom, Maggie called in sick. I need you to help serve dinner tonight." "Serve?" I echoed, confused. "Yes, just bring out the appetizers, clear plates, that sort of thing. You can handle that, right? It would really help us out." I wanted to refuse to maintain some dignity, but I also didn't want to cause problems, so I put on my best blouse and helped prepare for the dinner party. When guests arrived, Lisa introduced me with a casual wave of her hand. "This is Catherine. She's helping us out tonight." One guest, a woman dripping in jewelry, smiled condescendingly. "It's so hard to find good help these days. You're lucky." Lisa didn't correct her. She didn't say, "Actually, this is my mother." She simply nodded in agreement and guided the conversation elsewhere while I stood holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres, my cheeks burning with humiliation. As I moved around the table refilling water glasses, I heard another guest ask Lisa about family. "Do your parents live nearby?" the man inquired. Lisa sighed dramatically. "My father passed away. My mother is in transition right now." She spoke as if I were some distant problem, not the woman currently serving her guests dinner. I nearly dropped a plate when I heard her words, but maintained my composure for the grandchildren who were watching from the top of the stairs, confusion evident on their little faces. The next day, I met my friend Judy for coffee at a small cafe downtown. It was one of the few outings I allowed myself, budgeting carefully for a simple coffee and scone. When Judy asked how things were going, the facade I'd maintained crumbled. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the previous night's humiliation. "Catherine, this is abuse," Judy said, firmly gripping my hand. "You need to leave that house." "And go where?" I asked, wiping my eyes. "I don't have enough saved yet." "My offer still stands. My apartment is small, but there's room for you. We'll make it work." I considered it seriously for the first time. Judy lived in a one-bedroom apartment. She'd give me her bedroom and take the pull-out couch she insisted. It would be cramped for both of us, and I'd have even less privacy than at Lisa's. But I'd have dignity. We discussed other options too. Senior housing with subsidized rent assistance programs, even part-time work I might be able to do despite my arthritis. The conversation left me with more hope than I'd felt in months, but I still couldn't bring myself to give up on Lisa completely. Let me give it one more month, I told Judy. I need to save a bit more and maybe things will improve. Judy looked skeptical but didn't push. 1 month then, but Catherine promised me you'll put yourself first for once. The stress of living with Lisa was taking a physical toll. My arthritis, which had been manageable with medication, flared painfully. My hands swelled, making simple tasks like buttoning a shirt or opening a jar excruciating. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. Sleep became elusive, and dark circles formed permanent residences under my eyes. I maintained a cheerful facade around the grandchildren, not wanting them to worry. But alone in my basement room, I often cried myself to sleep, clutching Robert's photo. I don't know how much more I can take, I whispered to his smiling image. I wish you were here to tell me what to do. To cope with the overwhelming emotions, I started writing in a journal that I kept hidden between my mattress and box spring. Putting my feelings on paper helped process the pain of being treated as less than human by my own daughter. Today, Lisa said I smell like old person, I wrote one evening. She suggested I bathe more often, though I shower every day. I wonder if she has any idea how much her words hurt, or if she simply doesn't care anymore. As the days passed, I seriously considered leaving despite having nowhere definite to go. Maybe Judy's cramped apartment would be better than this slow erosion of my self-worth. Maybe a shelter would be preferable to being treated like an unwelcome intruder in my own family. Little did I know that fate was about to deal me a completely different hand. It was a Friday evening like any other when I made my weekly visit to Eddie's corner store. Lisa and James had taken the children to a school fundraiser, so I had a rare evening of solitude. The air had the crisp edge of early autumn, and fallen leaves crunched beneath my feet as I walked the 6 blocks to Eddie's. Mrs. Evans, right on time. Eddie greeted me with his usual warmth. After months as a regular, we'd developed a friendly rapport. Hello, Eddie. Just the usual today. As he printed my lottery ticket, Eddie gave me an encouraging smile. Got a good feeling about this one. Something in the air today. I chuckled, appreciating his optimism. You say that every week, Eddie. And one day I'll be right, he replied, handing me the ticket. You deserve some good luck, Mrs. Evans. I carefully placed the ticket in my wallet and headed back to Lisa's house, enjoying the momentary freedom of being alone with my thoughts. Back in my room, I turned on the small television I'd brought from my old house, one of the few possessions Lisa had allowed me to keep visible. The lottery drawing was at 8 o'clock. I didn't expect to win anything significant, maybe a free ticket or a few dollars if I was lucky. The ritual itself was what mattered, this small connection to Robert and our shared dreams. The drawing began with its familiar music and the host's enthusiastic introduction. I held my ticket, not really paying attention as the plastic balls tumbled in the machine. Then the first number was called. 17. I glanced down. 17 was my first number. 32. Another match. My heart beat a little faster, but I remained calm. 2 numbers wasn't anything special. 8. 3 matches now. I sat up straighter. 41. My hands began to tremble as I checked the 4th match. 3. 5 numbers now matched. This was unreal. I held my breath for the final number, and the final number is 22. I stared at my ticket in disbelief. All 6 numbers matched. I checked again, then a third time, comparing each number carefully. There was no mistake. I had just won the jackpot. The room seemed to tilt around me as the host announced the prize amount, $12 million. For several minutes, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. This had to be a mistake. Things like this didn't happen to people like me. When the initial shock subsided, I switched to my laptop and searched for information about claiming lottery prizes. The process seemed straightforward but overwhelming. I'd need to contact the Lottery Commission, fill out forms, decide between lump sum or annuity payments, consider tax implications. Winners' names would be public record in our state, though some measures could be taken to maintain privacy. I placed the ticket on the small desk and stared at it. This small piece of paper was now worth more money than I'd ever had or expected to have. It would solve all my financial problems. I could buy a comfortable home, get the medical treatments I needed, never worry about being a burden again. But something held me back from immediately sharing the news. Instinct, perhaps, or the wisdom that comes from experiencing betrayal. I needed to think carefully about my next steps. I called the Lottery Commission's information line, not identifying myself, but asking general questions about the claims process. I learned I had 180 days to claim the prize. There was no rush to announce anything tonight. For safekeeping, I placed the ticket in the silver locket Robert had given me on our 20th anniversary. The small heart-shaped pendant opened to reveal his picture on one side, and I carefully folded the ticket to fit on the other side, then fastened the chain around my neck. It would stay with me until I figured out what to do. The family returned home around 9:30. I could hear the children's excited voices as they described the event to Maggie, who had stayed behind to finish some cleaning. I composed myself and went upstairs to say goodnight to Zoe and Tyler. "Grandma, we won a raffle," Zoe exclaimed when she saw me. "It was a gift basket with chocolate and stuff." "How wonderful," I replied, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Was I acting normally? Could they tell something had happened? "Mom, are you feeling okay?" Lisa asked, studying my face. "You look flushed." "Just a bit tired," I managed, forcing a smile. Throughout the bedtime routine with the grandchildren, I felt Lisa's eyes on me, watching with unusual attention. At dinner, I'd barely touched my food. My appetite vanished with the excitement and anxiety of the lottery win. "Did you hear someone won the lottery?" James mentioned casually as he poured himself a nightcap in the kitchen. "Ticket was purchased right here in town at that little corner store on Maple." My heart nearly stopped. "How did he know already Eddie's store?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "You know it?" Lisa asked sharply. "I walk past it sometimes," I replied, avoiding a direct lie. James continued, seemingly oblivious to the tension. 12 million. Can you imagine life-changing money? Truly. I agreed quietly, acutely aware of the ticket resting against my chest inside the locket. I excused myself soon after, claiming fatigue, and retreated to my room. Sleep was impossible that night as my mind raced with possibilities, fears, and hopes. By morning, I had decided to wait at least a few days before claiming the prize or telling anyone. I needed legal advice first, needed to understand all my options. But fate had other plans. At breakfast, I was unusually quiet, still processing my new reality. The children chattered about their plans for the day while Lisa scrolled through her phone. "Oh," she exclaimed suddenly. "They announced the lottery winner was from Eddie's corner store on Maple Street. $12 million. She looked up from her phone. "Can you imagine someone from that neighborhood winning so much money?" I focused on buttering my toast, avoiding eye contact. "That's quite something." "Grandma goes to that store," Zoe said innocently. "Right, Grandma. You go there every Friday. Did you win?" All eyes turned to me. Lisa's gaze was particularly intense, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Zoe, what do you mean?" she asked, her voice deceptively casual. "I saw Grandma with a lottery ticket once," Zoe explained, "when I went to her room to show her my art project." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, confirming their suspicions more effectively than words could. "Mom," Lisa's voice had a dangerous edge, "have you been buying lottery tickets?" There seemed little point in lying. "Yes, I buy one ticket each week. It's something your father and I always did." "And yesterday's drawing, did you check your numbers?" Her voice was growing more intense. I hesitated too long. "You won, didn't you?" Lisa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Show me your ticket." "Lisa, please calm down," I said, rising as well. "This isn't appropriate in front of the children." "Kids go upstairs," James instructed firmly. They reluctantly obeyed, looking back with concerned expressions. Once they were gone, Lisa's composure shattered completely. "You won the lottery, didn't you?" she demanded, her voice rising to a shout. "While living under our roof, eating our food, using our electricity." "Lisa, I've contributed to expenses from my pension," I reminded her, trying to keep my voice steady. A pittance compared to what we've spent having you here, she retorted. Do you have any idea what it's cost us to support you? James stepped closer, his manner calmer but equally determined. Catherine, if you've won, you need to be practical about this. You're not equipped to handle that kind of money. I'm a grown woman who managed a household for 40 years. I replied, anger finally breaking through my shock. I think I can manage my own finances. Your track record suggests otherwise, Lisa snapped. You ended up homeless, remember? You came to us with nothing. Her words stung like physical blows. After spending everything on your father's medical care. Would you have preferred I let him die sooner to protect my savings? Lisa ignored this. Where's the ticket? We need to secure it properly. The implication was clear. She didn't trust me with my own winning ticket. I instinctively touched the locket hanging beneath my blouse. It's safe, I said. Show it to me now, Lisa demanded, stepping closer. As head of this household, I insist. I stepped back. No, Lisa, this ticket is mine. The money is mine. Her face contorted with rage. After everything we've done for you, taking you in when no one else would, you owe us. I don't owe you my lottery winnings, I stated firmly. I've been grateful for the roof over my head, but I've also been treated like an unwelcome guest at best and unpaid help at worst. Lisa's face flushed red. How dare you? We gave you a place to stay when you had nowhere else to go. And reminded me daily what a burden I was. I replied, finding strength I didn't know I had. Made me eat alone, serve your guests, hide in the basement when company came. That's not true, Lisa shouted, though we both knew it was. You're being ungrateful and selfish. That money could help all of us. The children's education, our mortgage. The children will be taken care of, I assured her. But I won't hand over my winnings to be controlled by you. That's when Lisa completely lost control. Her voice rose to a shriek that surely carried throughout the house. You won't get a penny of my money, you old witch. Not a single penny. I stood frozen, the words echoing in the suddenly silent kitchen. My own daughter calling me a witch, claiming my money as hers. In that moment, I saw Lisa clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as the child I'd raised and loved unconditionally, but as the entitled, materialistic adult she'd become. Get out, she continued, her voice lower but no less venomous. Get out of my house. You have 24 hours to leave. Lisa, James cautioned, seemingly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. She whirled on him. No, I want her gone. She's manipulative and ungrateful. Turning back to me, she added, and if you don't leave willingly, I'll call the police and tell them you're suffering from dementia and stole from us. The threat hung in the air between us. I looked at my daughter, searching for any sign of the little girl who once made me Mother's Day cards with glitter and heart stickers. She was nowhere to be found in the cold, hard face before me. I'll be gone by tomorrow morning, I said quietly. As I turned to go back to my room, Lisa's final words followed me like poison darts. And don't think you'll see the children again. Not after this. I woke before dawn the next morning, though I'd barely slept. The confrontation with Lisa had left me physically exhausted, but mentally alert, adrenaline still coursing through my system. I dressed quietly in the dim light filtering through my small basement window and began packing my meager belongings. It didn't take long. Most of what I owned had been sold or lost when my house was foreclosed. I had 2 suitcases and a tote bag, clothes, toiletries, a few books, and the precious photographs and keepsakes I'd managed to protect from Lisa's cleaning. As I packed, I wrote a letter to Zoe and Tyler explaining that I loved them very much and would see them soon, though I had to leave the house for a while. I didn't want them to think I'd abandoned them without a word. I slipped the note into Zoe's favorite book on her bookshelf, knowing she'd find it soon. I took just one family photograph from the living room. A picture of Lisa at her high school graduation, her face bright with hope and possibility, my arm around her shoulders. We were both smiling genuinely in that moment before money and status became her primary focus. I wanted to remember that there had been love between us once. By 6 o'clock, I had everything ready. I placed my suitcases by the door and made one final check of the room. The silver locket containing Robert's photo and the winning ticket hung safely around my neck. I'd slept with it there, afraid that Lisa might try to search my room while I slept. I heard movement upstairs. Lisa was an early riser, always up at 6 to exercise before the children woke. Taking a deep breath, I lifted my bags and made my way up the stairs. Lisa stood in the kitchen, still in her workout clothes, a smoothie in hand. She watched coldly as I struggled with my suitcases. "The guest room is clean and all personal items removed," I said formally, as if speaking to a stranger. She nodded stiffly. "Where will you go?" For a moment, I thought I detected genuine concern in her voice, but her next words dispelled that notion. "I need to know in case there are issues with the ticket." Of course. The money was still her only concern. "I'll be fine," I replied, not revealing my plans to stay with Judy. Something told me to keep that information to myself. "The ticket should rightfully belong to this household," Lisa said, making one last attempt. "You purchased it while living under our roof." I almost laughed at the absurdity of her logic. "That's not how the lottery works, Lisa. The ticket belongs to the purchaser." She set her glass down with unnecessary force. "We'll see about that. James is already talking to our attorney." I didn't respond, just continued toward the front door. Lisa followed a few steps behind, watching as I struggled to manage the suitcases down the front steps. She made no move to help. As I reached the sidewalk, I turned back briefly. Lisa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of anger and calculation. I wondered if she was already planning how to contest my win legally. What she didn't know, what I hadn't mentioned during our confrontation, was that the ticket wasn't just sitting unprotected in my locket. Months ago, Eddie had suggested I sign up for his store's loyalty card, which automatically registered lottery purchases in the buyer's name for security. Every ticket I bought was electronically linked to me, Catherine Evans, with my identification already in their system. Additionally, I'd signed the back of the ticket immediately after confirming the win, another security measure Eddie had once mentioned to all his regular lottery players. "Always sign your ticket right away," he'd advised. "Makes it harder for anyone else to claim it." Even if Lisa somehow got her hands on the physical ticket, she couldn't claim it as her own. The system already had me registered as the purchaser, and my signature confirmed my identity. But Lisa knew none of this. In her haste to throw me out and her certainty that she could somehow claim her money, she'd overlooked these crucial details. I walked away from the house without looking back again, pulling my suitcases behind me. The morning was bright and cool, birds singing in the maple trees lining the street. Despite everything, a strange sense of peace settled over me. For the first time in months, I was making my own decisions, charting my own course. I'd arranged for a taxi to meet me at the corner, not wanting Lisa to see where I was going. As I waited, I touched the locket hanging around my neck and thought of Robert. "You were right," I whispered. "Our luck did change. Just not in the way either of us could have ever imagined." The taxi dropped me at Judy's apartment building, a modest 12-story structure in a middle-class neighborhood across town. Judy was waiting at the entrance, her kind face filled with concern when she saw me struggle with my luggage. "Catherine, my God!" she exclaimed, rushing to help me. "When you called last night, you sounded awful. What happened?" I waited until we were safely inside her apartment door, locked behind us, to tell her everything. Her small living room, cluttered with books and colorful throw pillows, felt like a sanctuary after the sterile perfection of Lisa's house. "I won the lottery," I said simply once we were seated with cups of tea. Judy stared at me, mouth agape. "You're joking." I shook my head and carefully opened my locket, showing her the folded ticket. $12 million. "Holy mother of," Judy whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Catherine, that's incredible. But why are you here with your suitcases?" What did Lisa do? I recounted the previous day's confrontation, Lisa's rage and demands, the cruel words she'd hurled at me, and finally her ultimatum to leave within 24 hours. Judy's expression darkened with each detail. "That ungrateful, entitled," she began, then stopped herself. "I'm sorry. I know she's your daughter, but what she did is unforgivable." "She thought the ticket belonged to her somehow?" I explained, still trying to make sense of Lisa's reaction myself. "Called it her money, even though she didn't buy the ticket, didn't even know I played the lottery." Narcissists often believe they're entitled to everything in their orbit, Judy said. She'd worked as a counselor before retirement and often had insights into behavior that escaped me. In Lisa's mind, anything under her roof belongs to her, including your winnings. I sighed heavily. I never imagined money would reveal such ugliness in my own child. Money doesn't change people, Judy said gently. It just amplifies who they already are. The truth of her words hit me hard. The lottery hadn't changed Lisa. It had simply revealed the person she'd already become. Judy insisted I take her bedroom despite my protests, and we spent the morning making arrangements for my immediate needs. First, we contacted Angela Patel, a lawyer Judy knew who specialized in elder law and financial matters. Angela agreed to meet us that afternoon. You need proper legal protection before claiming that prize, Judy advised, especially if Lisa's already talking to attorneys. Angela's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, the interior warm and inviting, rather than intimidatingly formal. The lawyer herself was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put me at ease. I had explained my situation in detail, including Lisa's threats and my concerns about claiming the prize safely. You were smart to keep the ticket registration information to yourself, Angela said approvingly. That gives us an advantage if your daughter tries to contest the win. She outlined the claim process, explaining that in our state lottery, winners' names were public record, but certain measures could be taken to protect privacy and security. We can set up a trust or LLC to claim the prize, she suggested. It doesn't hide your identity completely, but it adds a layer of protection and helps manage the money more efficiently. We discussed the option of lump sum versus annuity payments. The lump sum would be significantly less than the full $12 million, about $7 million before taxes, Angela estimated, but would give me immediate access to funds. The annuity would pay out the full amount over 30 years. Given your age and immediate needs, Angela advised, the lump sum probably makes more sense for you. We can invest a portion to provide ongoing income. By the end of our 2-hour meeting, I had a clear plan and a formidable ally in Angela. She promised to begin paperwork immediately and accompany me to the Lottery Commission office the following week. In the meantime, she cautioned, tell as few people as possible. Once word gets out, everyone will have an opinion about your money. I followed her advice, sharing my news only with Judy and Eddie from the corner store, who was overjoyed when I called to tell him. I knew it. I knew you'd win someday, Mrs. Evans, he exclaimed. You deserve every penny. While Angela worked on the legal aspects, Lisa was apparently conducting her own investigation. She called my cell phone repeatedly over the next few days, alternating between threats and false apologies. Mom, I'm sorry if I overreacted, she said in one voicemail, her voice artificially sweet. We're family. We should work this out together. Please come home so we can talk. Hours later, another message arrived with a completely different tone. If you think you can take that money and disappear, you're mistaken. James talked to our lawyer. We have rights as your caretakers. I didn't respond to any of her messages on Angela's advice. Each call strengthened my resolve to protect myself and my winnings. Lisa's desperation grew when she tried to report the lottery ticket as stolen. The police took her report but explained they couldn't do much without evidence. When she contacted the Lottery Commission directly, she learned the winner had already initiated the claim process through legal representation. What Lisa still didn't know was that the ticket had been registered electronically in my name. She was searching frantically for a physical ticket she could never legally claim, even if she found it. Through all this, I remained safely at Judy's apartment, venturing out only for essential errands and my meetings with Angela. The stress took a toll on my health, but for the first time in years, I could afford proper medical care. I scheduled appointments with specialists for my arthritis and began a treatment plan that brought almost immediate relief. Within 2 weeks of leaving Lisa's house, I sat in the Lottery Commission office with Angela beside me, signing the final paperwork to claim my prize. I'd chosen to receive the lump sum through a trust Angela had established. After taxes, I would receive approximately $2 million. Still an astounding amount that would change my life completely. Congratulations, Mrs. Evans, the lottery official said, smiling as she processed my claim. The funds should be available in your account within 10 business days. As we left the office, Angela squeezed my arm gently. You did it, Catherine. Now let's make sure that money works for you, not against you. I nodded, thinking of Lisa and her desperate attempts to claim what was never hers. Money had already worked against us in ways I never could have imagined. With Angela's guidance, I began building a new life for myself. The first major decision was housing. I wanted something comfortable but not ostentatious, a place that felt like home rather than a showcase. After viewing several properties, I found a perfect match: a three-bedroom condominium in Riverside Gardens, a well-maintained community for residents 55 and older. The unit had an open floor plan, large windows that filled the rooms with natural light, and a small balcony overlooking a landscaped courtyard. At $375,000, it was a sensible investment that left plenty of funds for other needs. "This feels like me," I told Judy as we toured the space. "Comfortable without being showy." The community offered amenities I'd never dreamed of: having a heated pool fitness center designed for senior health walking paths and regular social activities. More importantly, it provided security and companionship, two things I'd been sorely lacking. Beyond housing, I made several other important financial decisions. I established trust funds for Zoe and Tyler's education, structured so that Lisa and James couldn't access the money for any other purpose. The children would receive these funds directly when they reached college age, regardless of my relationship with their parents. I donated a significant amount to the Cancer Research Center that had treated Robert, specifying that it be used for patient support services for families facing financial hardship due to medical costs. I knew firsthand how devastating those bills could be. For my own health care, I purchased comprehensive insurance that covered the specialized treatments my arthritis required. Within months of consistent care, I regained mobility I thought I'd lost forever. The constant pain that had been my companion for years diminished to occasional discomfort. Throughout this transition, I kept a low profile. Angela had advised minimal publicity, so while my name was officially recorded as the lottery winner, I declined interviews and public appearances. Local news mentioned my win briefly, but without the human interest angle they clearly wanted. This relative anonymity didn't prevent Lisa from discovering that I had claimed the prize, however. Public records eventually revealed that Catherine Evans had indeed collected the lottery winnings, and Lisa's fury reached new heights. What I didn't know until later was that Lisa and James had been facing serious financial problems of their own. James's real estate development company had made several poor investments, and they were significantly overextended. Lisa had been counting on her lottery money to solve these problems without having to downsize their lavish lifestyle. As their financial situation deteriorated, so did their marriage. James blamed Lisa for alienating me and losing access to my winnings. Lisa blamed James for their investment failures. The perfect image they presented to the world was cracking under pressure. I learned these details from Maggie, their former housekeeper, who contacted me about 2 months after I moved into my new home. We met for coffee, and she explained that she'd left their employment after Lisa became increasingly volatile. "Miss Evans, I hope you don't mind me reaching out," Maggie said nervously. "I just wanted you to know that the children miss you terribly. They ask about you all the time." My heart ached at the thought of Zoe and Tyler. "Are they all right?" Maggie hesitated. "They're confused. Mrs. Whitfield told them you abandoned them because you don't love them anymore, but they don't believe it." Anger flared within me. Using the children as emotional pawns was unconscionable. "There's something else," Maggie continued. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield argue constantly about money now. I overheard Mr. Whitfield say his business is in trouble, and Mrs. Whitfield keeps saying if only her mother hadn't stolen the lottery money, they wouldn't be in this mess." The irony wasn't lost on me. In Lisa's distorted view, I had somehow stolen money that was rightfully hers, though she hadn't purchased the ticket or even known about it until after I won. I thanked Maggie for the information and gave her my contact details to share with the children if she thought it appropriate. I missed my grandchildren desperately, but didn't want to put them in the middle of adult conflicts. 3 days after my meeting with Maggie, the confrontation I'd been dreading finally occurred. I was arranging flowers on my balcony when the community security desk called to inform me that Elisa Whitfield was insisting on seeing me. "She claims to be your daughter," the security officer explained. "She seems quite agitated." I considered refusing the visit, but some part of me needed closure. "You can send her up, but please stay alert in case there's a problem." Minutes later, Lisa was pounding on my door. When I opened it, I barely recognized her. Always immaculately groomed, she now looked disheveled, her hair hastily pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. "So, this is where you're hiding," she said, pushing past me into the condo. "Very cozy. Paid for with money that should have helped your family." I closed the door calmly. "Hello, Lisa. You look tired." She paced my living room like a caged animal, alternating between rage and a disturbing attempt at sweetness. "Mom, this has gone far enough," she said, her voice shifting to a wheedling tone. "We're family. We should be helping each other." "I agree," I replied steadily. "That's why I've set up trust funds for Zoe and Tyler's education. They'll have everything they need for college." Her face contorted. "What about us? James and I are facing serious financial problems. The business is struggling. We might lose the house." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "But my money can't solve your problems, Lisa. Those stem from choices you and James made long before I won the lottery." Her artificial sweetness evaporated instantly. "After everything we did for you, we took you in when you had nowhere to go. We fed you, housed you, and reminded me daily what a burden I was," I countered. "Made me eat alone, serve your guests, hide when company came." "That's not true," she shouted, though we both knew it was. "Lisa, I was there. I lived it. You treated me like an unwelcome intruder at best, and unpaid help at worst. You called me an old witch and threatened to claim I had dementia if I didn't leave your house immediately. I was upset you can't hold that against me forever." I sighed deeply. "This isn't about holding grudges. It's about recognizing patterns. You see me as a resource to be used, not as a person to be respected or loved." "That's ridiculous. I've always taken care of you." "No, Lisa. You've always taken care of yourself. There's a difference." Her eyes darted around the condo, taking in the comfortable but not luxurious furnishings. "So, what, you're going to hoard all that money for yourself, live in this retirement village while your family struggles? My money is being managed responsibly," I explained. "Some is invested for my future care needs. Some is set aside for the grandchildren. I've donated to cancer research. What remains ensures I'll never have to depend on anyone's reluctant charity again." Lisa's face flushed with anger. "You're being selfish and vindictive. You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt." "I'm protecting myself from further exploitation," I corrected her. "And I'm teaching you an important lesson about consequences." "Consequences," she spat. "I'll show you consequences. You'll never see Zoe and Tyler again." "That would hurt them more than it would hurt me," I pointed out. "They're innocent in all this, Lisa. Don't punish them for adult disagreements." "They're my children. I decide who sees them." I nodded toward the corner of the living room where a small red light blinked on a security camera. "This entire conversation is being recorded, Lisa, including your threats to keep the children from me out of financial spite." She followed my gaze, her expression changing as she realized the implications. In a custody discussion, such recorded behavior wouldn't reflect well on her. "You're recording me in your home. That's invasion of privacy." "It's a security system that came with the condo," I explained calmly. "The management installed cameras after a series of break-ins last year. There are signs posted at all entrances to the community." It was a slight exaggeration. I'd added the internal camera after moving in on Angela's advice precisely for situations like this. But Lisa didn't need to know that detail. "I think you should leave now," I said firmly. "When you're ready to have a respectful conversation, you're welcome to call and arrange a proper visit. Until then, I'll be pursuing legal visitation rights to see my grandchildren." Lisa stood frozen for a moment, realizing her position wasn't as strong as she'd thought. Then, without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the sofa, trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. The confrontation had been inevitable, but that didn't make it any less painful. My own daughter had come to my home not out of concern or love, but purely for financial gain. Later that evening, I received a series of text messages from a number I didn't recognize. They were from Zoe using her friend's phone since Lisa had apparently blocked my number on hers. "Grandma, are you okay? Mom came home really mad. She said you have a new house. Can we visit?" Tears filled my eyes as I replied, careful not to disparage Lisa while still reassuring my granddaughter. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I do have a new place with a pool and a garden. I'd love for you and Tyler to visit when your mom says it's okay. I miss you both very much." The reply came quickly. "We miss you too. Mom said you left because you don't care about us anymore, but I knew that wasn't true." "Never true," I typed back. "I love you both more than anything." I saved the exchange as evidence for the lawyer I'd hired to help secure grandparent visitation rights. The process would be difficult, but I was determined not to lose my grandchildren because of Lisa's greed and spite. As predicted, Lisa's campaign against me extended beyond our immediate family. She began spreading lies among family, friends, and acquaintances, claiming I'd developed dementia and was being manipulated by new friends who wanted my money. These attempts backfired spectacularly when several longtime community members came forward with stories about how Lisa had treated me while I lived with her. Maggie wasn't the only one who had noticed Lisa's behavior. Neighbors' parents from the children's school, even some of James's business associates had seen the dynamic between us. "Everyone knew she treated you terribly," my friend Judy told me. "We just didn't know how to help while you were under her roof." Lisa and James's social standing suffered as people began to distance themselves. Several couples declined their dinner party invitations. Lisa was asked to step down from the parent committee at the children's private school. James lost potential investors who didn't want to be associated with the controversy. The social consequences seemed to affect Lisa more deeply than the financial ones. She'd built her identity around being admired and envied. Now she was being quietly ostracized by the very people whose approval she craved. I took no pleasure in her difficulties despite the poetic justice. She was still my daughter, and some part of me would always love the person she could have been, even as I protected myself from the person she had become. 6 months passed with no direct contact between Lisa and me, though my lawyer kept me updated on the legal proceedings regarding grandparent visitation. The courts in our state recognized grandparents' rights, especially in cases where a prior relationship existed and continuing that relationship would serve the children's best interests. During this time, I focused on rebuilding my own life. The initial loneliness of living alone after months in a busy household gradually gave way to a sense of peaceful independence. I decorated my condo with items that brought me joy: colorful artwork, comfortable furniture, family photographs from happier times. I joined several community groups at Riverside Gardens, including a book club and a gentle yoga class designed for people with arthritis. Through these activities, I met other residents and began forming new friendships. Marion, a retired librarian with a wicked sense of humor, became a particular friend. She'd lost her husband around the same time as I'd lost Robert and understood the unique grief that comes with losing a life partner. We often walked together in the mornings, sharing stories and gradually healing old wounds. I also reconnected with former colleagues from Lincoln Elementary, organizing monthly lunch gatherings where we reminisced about our teaching days and caught up on current lives. These connections helped fill the void left by Lisa's rejection. Finding purpose beyond financial security became important to me. I volunteered at a local literacy center, teaching adults who had never learned to read. The work was rewarding and reminded me why I'd loved teaching. The moment when someone grasps a concept they've struggled with is magical at any age. I also began mentoring seniors facing financial challenges, helping them navigate assistance programs and housing options. My own experience of near homelessness gave me insight into the fear and shame many elderly people feel when they can't make ends meet. Therapy became another vital part of my healing journey. Dr. Melissa Cohen specialized in family estrangement and helped me process the trauma of Lisa's betrayal without becoming bitter or defining myself as simply a victim. "Your daughter's behavior reveals her character, not your worth," she reminded me often. Throughout this period, I maintained indirect contact with Zoe and Tyler through cards, letters, and occasional messages through friends. I was careful never to disparage Lisa or James, focusing instead on letting the children know I loved them and was thinking of them. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. In November, I received an email from James, Lisa's husband. The message was brief and formal. "Catherine, Lisa lost her job in the downsizing at Harmon and Reed last month. We've had to make significant changes to our lifestyle. I believe it's time we discuss the situation regarding the children. Lisa may not agree with me, but I think they need their grandmother. Would you be willing to meet?" I consulted with Angela before responding, cautious about James's motives, but hopeful about reconnecting with my grandchildren. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near his office, neutral territory for both of us. James looked different when I saw him, thinner with new lines around his eyes. The arrogant confidence had been replaced by a weary pragmatism. "Thank you for coming," he said, shaking my hand formally before we sat down. "How are Zoe and Tyler?" I asked immediately. A small smile softened his face. "They're good, resilient kids. They ask about you all the time." I felt tears threatening and took a sip of water to compose myself. "I've missed them terribly." James nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology, Catherine. I should have stepped in when when things got out of hand." "You had your own complicated relationship with Lisa," I acknowledged. "I understand that now." He stared into his coffee for a moment. "Things have changed for us. The business is stabilizing, but we've had to downsize considerably. Sold the house, moved to a condo. Lisa's job loss hit us hard, both financially and, well, it affected her self-image." "I'm sorry she lost her job," I said sincerely. "It might be the best thing that could have happened." James replied, surprising me. "It's forced her to reevaluate what matters. We're in counseling, both couples and individual. It's been revealing." This was unexpected. The James I knew had seemed as materialistic as Lisa, equally invested in appearances and status. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said cautiously. James leaned forward. "Lisa doesn't know I am meeting you. She's still struggling with everything that happened. But I think it's wrong to keep the children from you, and our therapist agrees. Would you be open to seeing them, maybe starting with supervised visits until Lisa adjusts to the idea?" "Of course," I replied immediately. "I'd love that." We worked out an initial arrangement. I would see the children the following Saturday at a local park with James present. If that went well, we'd establish a regular schedule. "One more thing," James added as we were leaving. "Lisa sent an email to your old address a few weeks ago. I don't know if you still check it, but it might be worth reading." I hadn't checked that account in months, assuming it would contain only more accusations from Lisa. When I got home, I logged in and found the message James had mentioned. It was brief but startling in its change of tone. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I want you to know that I'm starting to understand some things about myself that aren't pretty. The therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies that stem from insecurity. I'm working on it. Not for the money, I know that's gone and it should be, but because I don't like who I became. Lisa." It wasn't an explicit apology, but it was the first acknowledgement from Lisa that her behavior had been wrong. A tiny seed of hope took root in my heart. The first reunion with my grandchildren was emotional for all of us. Zoe ran to me the moment she saw me, throwing her arms around my waist. Tyler, more reserved by nature, approached cautiously but soon joined the hug. "Grandma, you look different," Zoe observed. "Happier." "I am happier," I told her, "especially now that I'm seeing you two again." We spent the afternoon playing at the park, the children catching me up on their lives, seemingly determined to fill in every detail of the months we'd been apart. James kept a respectful distance, present but not interfering. As the children played on the swings, he approached me on the bench where I was sitting. "They've missed you," he said simply. "The feeling was mutual," I replied. "Thank you for this, James." He nodded. "Lisa knows they're with you today. She didn't object. I think that's progress." It was indeed progress, small but significant. The road to reconciliation with Lisa would be long and might never lead to the relationship I'd once hoped for. But for the first time, it seemed possible that we might find some middle ground. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged. I saw the grandchildren regularly, initially with James present, then occasionally on my own. Lisa and I communicated primarily through texts and emails, cautiously rebuilding some form of relationship. The first face-to-face meeting between Lisa and me since her angry visit to my condo occurred 3 months later in the office of a family therapist who specialized in estrangement issues. The session was difficult but productive. Lisa was still defensive at times, but she was trying, and so was I. "I was terrified of ending up like you," Lisa admitted during one particularly raw moment, struggling, financially dependent on others. "That fear made me cruel." "And I could have been more present during your childhood," I acknowledged. Your father and I both worked so hard to provide that sometimes we missed emotional connections. We were both right in our ways. Neither explanation excused Lisa's treatment of me, but understanding the roots of her behavior helped me process it. There was no instant forgiveness, no dramatic reconciliation like in movies. Instead, we began a slow, careful rebuilding of trust, facilitated by professionals and bounded by clear expectations on both sides. Lisa and James never regained their former lifestyle, but they found a more balanced way of living. James's business stabilized at a smaller scale, and Lisa eventually found a new position at a smaller firm. Their new condo was modest compared to their previous home, but comfortable and welcoming in ways their showcase house had never been. Most importantly, they were teaching Zoe and Tyler different values than before: the importance of character over possessions, kindness over status. As for me, I found a peace I hadn't expected. The money brought security, yes, but the real wealth came in rediscovering my own strength and building authentic relationships. I often thought about what Robert would say if he could see how things had unfolded. He'd always valued family connection above material possessions, even as we struggled at times to make ends meet. I'd like to think he would be proud of how I'd handled this unexpected turn of events, protecting myself while still leaving room for healing. On my 60th birthday, 2 years after the lottery win that changed everything, I hosted a small gathering at my condo. The guests included my new friends from Riverside Gardens, old colleagues from Teaching Days Judy, who had offered sanctuary when I needed it most, and Eddie from the corner store who still claimed credit for my lucky ticket. Lisa and James came with the children arriving slightly late and looking nervous. Our relationship was still healing, the trust fragile but growing. Lisa brought a homemade cake, something she would never have done in her previous life where everything had to be catered and perfect. As I looked around at this diverse group of people who now formed my community, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path had been painful, but it had led me to a richer understanding of what truly constitutes wealth. Later, as the party wound down, I stepped onto my balcony for a moment alone. Looking up at the evening sky, I thought of Robert and whispered, "Our luck did change, just not in the way we expected." The lottery win had revealed ugly truths, yes, but it had also created space for new beginnings and deeper authenticity. The true fortune wasn't the millions in my bank account, but the wisdom gained through hardship and the courage to define family on my own terms. Money, I had learned, reveals character but doesn't change who people fundamentally are. Family ties require nurturing beyond blood connections. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love, not punishment, and forgiveness becomes possible without forgetting or enabling when all parties commit to growth. These were the lessons I would carry forward, far more valuable than any lottery jackpot. What about you? Have you ever had a relationship that required rebuilding from the ground up, or experienced how money can change family dynamics? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your experiences might help someone else navigating similar waters. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the greatest wealth comes in the form of self-discovery and authentic connections.